What's the secret to scaling female-founded businesses using data instead of gut feelings? And how can service providers really start using this approach today? Well, my guest is going to be talking all about that. Welcome back to the show. If you are new here, I am Jen Vasquez. I help hyper-busy female service providers simplify their marketing using Pinterest so that they can book more clients, grow their income, and make a bigger impact. And on this podcast, you'll also find expert interviews and actionable tips to help you tackle marketing without all that overwhelm. If that sounds like your jam, I would love to invite you to subscribe to either YouTube or the podcast. Today, I am so excited. We had like the best conversation before this recording, but I'm very excited to chat with Rita Barry of Rita Barry & Co. Rita is the founder of Rita Barry & Co., a digital marketing agency dedicated to helping female-founded businesses scale using a strategy-first marketing approach. I can't wait to dive into that.
Yes.
Her team prioritizes data-driven methods to refine customer acquisition, empowering entrepreneurs to achieve sustainable growth through testing, iteration, and actionable insights rather than gut feelings or a fleeting trend. Welcome, Rita. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you. I am so grateful to be here. So excited. We have very similar marketing strategy brains, so it's always very exciting to geek out a little bit with a fellow lover.
I know,
of that.
one marketing agency to another, like this is my jam. I could do this every day and be super happy.
Exactly.
All right. So talk to me a little bit about kind of how you got to the business you're in today. There's always windy roads throughout our life. So let's dive into that a little bit.
This is so windy. It's really funny. I don't come from a very entrepreneurial background like that, as far as like no one in my family was entrepreneurial, or, I wasn't around a lot of entrepreneurs growing up. So it was very mystical to me that people just magically made a business appear. And so the fact that it's not nearly as magical and mystical as I thought it was, I find endlessly helpful because I come from that world as well. So essentially mine was, I'm not a natural entrepreneur. Like I didn't have examples of it growing up. It never occurred to me to even do this for a living. And I went to university for microbiology, calculus, stats. I was going to be a doctor, a surgeon specifically. Cutting people makes me sick. So that derailed that entire life dream and tens of thousands of dollars of university education, unfortunately. I mean, I did learn how to learn really well. And so from that, right, the schooling piece, I ended up having like a summer job in university working in social services for people that had developmental disabilities, like adults. And I fell in love with it. And so then, when I told my mom, I was like, so Mom, I know I'm like the first person to go to college in our entire family. And I know I was like going to be a surgeon, and I know like I'm really good at science stuff. I think I want to be a social worker. Like that was like, she was happy for me, and yet not, right? Like it's just because obviously social work pays like the peanuts on the floor at the circus, right? It was just absolutely awful. So after university, instead of doing doctory things, I went into social services. I ran community group homes for adults with developmental disabilities in the community for almost a decade, 8 years, something like that, was where I met my husband. So all good. There was a reason for everything. And then midway, like 2008, we moved across the country for my husband's job. He got his dream job, and I had to leave my position. We had a 2-year-old daughter at the time, and I just kind of had some space where I didn't need to work. And we didn't have any family around. We didn't have any, like we were in a town of 800 people. So I didn't have anywhere. I didn't want to like let my daughter stay with strangers. And there was also really wasn't anywhere for me to do what I had done before because it was such a small community. And so I just had open space, which created an enormous amount of boredom for me. I went a little crazy. And that's kind of when internet blogging, everything in like the late 2000s, right, was kind of really taking off. And so just by happy accident, I taught myself how to code. I learned JavaScript, HTML, CSS, Python. Granted, pulling back from my school, like my brain does work that way. So it wasn't as crazy because there was a lot of carryover. And I started designing websites. It turned into just me making a little money on the side. I wanted to like cover the car payment. That was like the goal. I was like, wouldn't that be cool? Not knowing I would never have a car payment again, right? Because you just buy those things now. But doing that, and it grew into a marketing agency where I started learning digital analytics, and being a woman who does marketing analytics was kind of the moment, I think, when everything really kind of got a lot easier for me because I was so niched. And as you know, it's really hard to find analytics help. And it's always,
Hello, that's the worst.
it is the worst. And it's always a guy. And so I also only work.
Always a guy.
I had one client tell me, she goes, if a man who lives in his mom's basement tells me how to run my $50,000 business again, I am going to scream. Right. So it's like, that's just what everyone was experiencing. So just by happy accident, right, and paying attention, of course, because, you know, you testing and iterating all these things, we just started adding more services, or I guess it was just me for a long time as a solopreneur. And then it like grew into an agency where we do all manners of the marketing things. So like fractional CMO work, paid advertising, the digital analytics still, copywriting funnels, all of that kind of stuff. So it's grown a lot. It feels real fast, but also it was like 2008 that it all started. So it's also been like 16 years.
As we get older, it feels like a long time.
Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh. But I feel like there was a really slow period because I'd never run a business before. I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how to incorporate and hire real employees and like all of those sorts of things. It wasn't as fast because I had never been around that before. And there was an awful lot of learning that had to happen. And then once we kind of found our niche, found our people, got some traction, then it all kind of took off. But it was a very like windy road. And at times I feel like the science stuff and then the relationship stuff that comes with social services and social work was so unrelated, but it has become this beautiful like synergy between the analytical part of marketing and the empathy that's needed to be a really good marketer. It really became like, oh, what else would there be? I think social work and STEM students should absolutely exist in one person, and then you should go make a marketing agency. But
period.
Yeah, it's kind of bizarre, but when I had someone reflect that back to me a number of years ago, they're like, oh, that actually makes perfect sense. At like
it totally does, because oftentimes, not always, the analytical side or the science side does not always mesh with the human side. Exactly. But when it does, it's good.
Because people forget, like they get so into the numbers, they forget every single one of those numbers is actually a human being with thoughts and feelings and a life and problems and all the things. And then the other side, yeah, you can get knee deep in the empathy and forget that you can measure all this stuff too. So it really is this lovely marriage of both of those things that was entirely a happy accident.
I love that. Okay, so let's dive into the good stuff.
Okay.
Can you walk us through your strategy first marketing approach? So describe what it is and why do you think it's so essential for scaling businesses?
So, okay, the strategy part, I love. It's such an ambiguous word for so many people. And so the thing that I love to simplify strategy down is that all it is just like, if that word is overwhelming, is just think about solving the right problems. That's all strategy is to me. And so I'm like, it can get as complicated, as simple as you want, but where people go wrong is, and they omit strategy, is that they don't actually spend any time figuring out, is what I'm doing right now actually solving the right problems in my business from a marketing perspective? You could apply that technically to anything in your business. And so that's the goal. And so once again, as simple as complicated as you want. But when we're looking at solving the right problems, we kind of got to work through a little bit of a, step by step. The first thing we always start with is the business goals, which seems like par for the course, but lots of people omit it where they're like, these are my marketing goals. I'm like, but your marketing goals are in service of those other ones, right? And so
they're the action that will drive the business.
This one. Exactly. And so lots of times people go like, these are my marketing goals. I'm like, well, what's like the business goals? Because the other side of that in solving the right problem is that sometimes people want like more profit in the business, right? Because that's really what they're suffering with. They're like, you know what, we're making enough money, but there's just no profit. And how you solve that problem from a marketing perspective would be very different, and potentially not even the marketing department, right? Like, so there's
like cut some expenses. That's the first place I'd go. Well, and I'm just saying.
Exactly, right?
Like marketing's not going to fix that problem, basically, is what you're saying. And I completely agree.
And so that's the biggest piece. We're like, what is your business goal? And then how does marketing roll up into that? Like, what are the parts of that business goal that marketing's really responsible for? And so once we've decided that and you're like, okay, I know these are what my marketing goals are, right? Like as far as what the business goal is, then the first thing I get everybody to do is, and that we do ourselves, is like, what is the current state of play? Which is where a lot of the data comes from. Because you cannot fix something if you don't know how any of it's working. And as simple as that sounds, even business owners that we talk to that are making 10, 50 more million dollars, and you're like, okay, like what numbers are you looking at? Sometimes they have nothing to show me. And it's rough, and you're like, okay, we've got nowhere to go but up, so it's all good. But knowing the current state of things is the only way that you can improve something. So that's always the first piece, is like, okay, we know what we need to do with our marketing. What is it currently doing, right? Because you don't need to make it all up. You just need to make up the difference between where it is now and where you want to be. And then we look at things like, what does the customer journey look like? Actually, like, what's the logic of your business? How does it actually turn a person into a customer? And like visually, I love people to flowchart it so they can actually see it, right? And make it all real, because then you realize you're missing steps, or you have an overcomplication, right? There's something beautiful about just a diagramming in a really simple way, even if it's on paper, what your customer journey looks like. And then you spot all the bits that you either mentally missed or what have you. It's so beautiful to get it out on paper. And so many of us are visual. We look at things like ideal clients. We do message maps to make sure that people understand the way they have to talk to their customers about their products.
And you have to say it like 85,000 times.
85,000 times.
It's not just 2 posts, people, just as an FYI.
Like, if Brene Brown came on and started talking about bicycle repair, right? Like, because everyone's just like, oh my gosh, I have to say different things so that everybody can like understand what I'm talking about and be interesting. I'm like, that'd be so disconcerting. If I'm like, Brene Brown should not be talking about this. I know she's bored of talking about it. That's fine. But I haven't heard her say this yet, right? Or I didn't hear it, right? And so I know everyone gets so sick of hearing themselves repeating things over and over again. But
yes. That's why I love systems to do the posting for you, because if you post, you feel like you're bugging people. And yet when you take out the piece of the mindset by using a system to do the posting for you, then you're not struggling with yourself anymore.
Right. You remove the human error of it. You're just like, this is just doing it. I have the thought once and this will continue forever. Yeah. I love doing that. Especially those mundane tasks or the things where I'm like, does it really matter if I do this? Right.
And I think too, you're talking about the map, which I don't know that a lot of people do that, but I find seeing the map enables me to see where people are dropping off. Right. So
Exactly.
like in order to project clients and how many clients you're booking and all that kind of thing, you need to know like how many consultation calls it takes before you kind of get a yes on average.
Right.
And then you can make sure you're trying to get all of those calls booked so that you can get to that number you need, because it's oftentimes about the number of times you do something.
Absolutely. And then you get better at it. And then that number even like, and then it increases all of those pieces, but people often just don't have it mapped and then assign numbers to each of those stages. And then like literally that's like 90% of it. If we're looking at like, what is the 80-20 of things? I'm always like,
yes.
Do you have your customer journey mapped? And some people call it got customer journey, they have marketing maps.
Yeah, they have like
all the
85,000
right?
names.
Some people just call it their funnel, depending on what business you have. It could just be a simple funnel, but that's it. And like just to actually get it mapped out is amazing. So you've got that, you know who your ideal client is, you know how you talk to them about stuff. Past campaign performance is usually a great thing as far as like looking at what your current state of marketing is, to look at like, how have my past campaigns performed and what kind of results do we get? And then of course the tracking piece. Most people, before they really kind of dig into like getting that gap filled between their current marketing where they want to go, usually tracking is a big piece that they have to get in place, because it's hard and it's confusing, and I won't pretend otherwise, because especially if your brain doesn't like math, charts, complicated like that, there's a lot of mental stuff that happens when people open Google Analytics. Yeah.
And I think a lot of business owners, when they don't feel confident in something or they are confused about something, they tend to avoid it. Instead of working with an expert or pushing through, because you have to get uncomfortable sometime. Well, all the time.
All the time.
I think the times that my business has grown, like big leap growth, is all from me being uncomfortable.
And isn't that awful? That should have been on the label. They're like, entrepreneurship. This is like, it's going to be therapy, people. Like, it's just, you're like, I hate failure. And they're like, that's all this is.
Someone once said that being an entrepreneur is like a roller coaster. Well, that's fun. You're
Yeah.
not being truthful.
I had no
Maybe going
idea.
to the dentist? No, I'm just
Yeah.
kidding.
But it's true. Sometimes, like, there's some periods of like seasons of the business that do feel like every day
Yes.
I'm getting a root canal, right? Like this is proper
Mm-hmm.
awful. And that one
Mm-hmm.
day it won't feel like that. And that's why it's nice to have entrepreneurial friends so that we can all encourage each other. Right. Absolutely.
Exactly.
But so yeah, the tracking piece can feel like the most awful thing for people. But my advice for that always is other, like, because if you can't afford to hire someone to help you and even
Yeah.
to, and not to do it for you, because especially when you're small, I think it's really useful to get like a very like baseline knowledge of stuff, have someone like
Yes.
come in and teach you, or, take a real rudimentary course. You will be
Yes.
leaps and bounds above most people, spending like $200 on an analytics course just to learn it.
Yeah, I mean, I have had the feeling where I am spending hours and hours because when you're a baby entrepreneur, you have more time typically. You don't have
Yes.
all of the clients that you have. And I would spend hours and hours and hours of learning and educating and like understanding and all the things, but I wasn't making money. Like
No.
so like but you need to get those things in place. And I always say you've got two options. You can pay for it or you can give time,
Yes.
but you can't you got to pick one of those. So
Exactly.
if you can financially, having somebody like put something in place or explain to you how it's done so that you can try to replicate it moving forward is always the best way, in my opinion.
No, I agree. Because it really shortcuts, like people can like set stuff up for you and then you're just
Yes.
maintaining the system,
Like
or
SEO, I have an SEO
yeah.
person. Of course. Why would I need to be an expert on that? I
Because
don't.
right? Like, because you understand,
I
right? I'm the same
understand
way.
theoretically.
Yeah, I know how it works. I have someone on my team who's really smart about that. And I was like, but I can have an intelligent conversation about it, all those things. But I don't need to be, nor it doesn't make financial sense to be the world's best SEO anything, right? Like,
Exactly.
there's other
All
people.
right. So,
Yeah.
how does like data driven decision making transform that customer acquisition compared to traditional methods?
So I'd say the traditional method I see with a lot of folks that kind of come in the door and I get to talk to is like, I think guessing is what I would call the traditional method.
Gut instinct.
Yeah,
I
like
mean,
the
it's
gut
great
instinct.
if you have a gut feeling about it, but if you have the data back you up, you're going to be way more confident.
Like it's amazing. And that's the thing with the guessing and the gut instinct, because I've had a lot of people push back where they're like, but gut feelings are important. Like women should follow their intuition. And I'm like, absolutely yes. And I was like,
And
you cannot scale your gut feeling to another person. And so that's where I often get inserted into people's businesses and have conversations with them, because they're their own customer, right? They know their audience incredibly well. If they're a service provider, you're often talking to your customers all the time. So you get to know your people super well. And so by nature, you're able to market to them really well. But then you get to a certain like size where you're like, I can't be like the key marketing person anymore, right? Because it's bottlenecking everything. And so then they try to like give it to someone else. So you're like, okay, this person on my team is in charge of marketing now. But when you've been running your business on gut feel and your own experience, how do you process, where's the SOP that says, right? That
check your gut.
check your gut based on your 20 years of experience with this particular type of audience and customer, and make it like that is impossible. So it's more, how do you take out, like, how do you help remove that person and the business owner from being the key person that has to do everything? And that's what the data does. It really just, it measures what that customer journey looks like that we were talking about. It helps you see what is working that you can just push harder on and amplify and do more of, what needs improvement because it's not profitable, and then like what is like total hot garbage that needs to get rebuilt. Because those are really only your three options. You could either like amplify, refine, or build. Like those are the three, and building is always the last thing. It's always the worst.
Yeah.
So,
Data alone isn't always the end all be all of a decision either, because
exactly.
I had, you have your intake form and they're like, yes, I found you on Instagram. And then I did a whole sort of research on that. This was back in 2020. And it actually turned out that it was only 20% of people found me through Instagram, because what they were answering is, where were they when they made the decision to work with you, or when they made the decision to reach out to you? That's what they tell you.
Right.
So asking those second clarifying questions of, Awesome. Were you referred to me so I can thank them? Or did you use a certain hashtag? Like data alone won't also make those decisions. Like you do sort of need to have these conversations with your clients as well, I
Exactly.
think.
It does not replace customer research, like 100%. Because the customer research and actually like customer feedback loops that are like naturally built into your business and talking to your customers, because it's the thing nobody wants to do because it's awkward and weird for a lot of folks. It's like my jam. I was just like customer interviews all day long. I love talking to people. But I know it's awkward because it's like the second I say it to people, they're like, they freeze up, they turn a weird color, all of that kind of stuff that happens. But there, once again, there's ways of like making it easier and all that stuff. But that getting the actual voice of customer, getting their feedback, hearing their thoughts, because people don't recall
Huge.
that stuff well, right? Like when
Huge. And it gives you the words that you can then go market your business with too. It
exactly
makes it so much more effective.
everything about
Uh,
it, like
yeah.
just being able to like that's been the secret. And some people are like, "What is the secret?" I was like, "The secret is sometimes we just talk to people's customers and they haven't talked to them in a really long time." And we find out all the things we need to know to tweak the things we need to tweak to make it better.
And sometimes it's easier to have a company like yours do that so that you're not doing that, so that the customer doesn't feel awkward being truthful and
In
honest
front of you, like
when it's
when
not.
I have a company that does case studies for me because interviewing my own customers and creating case studies feels really weird for everybody. And I have a
Yeah.
third party do. So I totally feel it too. Like sometimes it's really nice to have that not be you, especially if you actually want real unfiltered feedback, because yeah, people try to be nice and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, I say that's the biggest piece is if you've got the data and then you can combine it with like the knowledge of the person, you marry it
Sweet spot.
together, because you'll still get things like a sales page that isn't converting, and you can measure how far people get down the page, and you can measure all of these sorts of things and still not be sure what it is
Yeah.
that's not moving the needle. So like it's when it comes down to granular stuff like that, it's not always black and white, but at least you have a really good idea that the place that's falling off is this sales page. So then
Yeah.
at least you're in the right neighborhood, right?
For
Rather
sure.
than
That right at the spot that they fall off, put a nice big review, like or
exactly instead of
testimonial.
worrying about like your ad, right? Because that's what people will
Or
happen is
talking about yourself. I see so many people on the sales page, like toward the top or the middle, they're like, and I'm so and so, and I have 5 kids and 2 pets. And I'm like,
yes,
people don't really care. They want
not
to know
yet.
what you're going to do for them.
Absolutely. Because those like because those things like especially when you're really experienced, right? You'll look at it and you go like, oh, it's probably this. And that's what I find too, is that you can probably get a pretty good idea, especially if it's a really low converting page, high traffic, things like that. You can pretty much usually it's one of the normal culprits to poor conversion, or like the price is missing, which actually happens a weird amount, or it's hard to read, or things like that.
Where the
But when you
button doesn't work.
yeah, but the card is broken, or all the things.
And it's
Often
tech, and that's confusing for most business owners.
exactly. And well, and they'll update something and it worked before and now it doesn't. There's all those sorts of things. So I mean, there's definitely a lot of things that like just with a heuristic analysis of the page you can figure out, but you're still kind of taking a very educated guess based on the data. But once again, at least
Yeah.
you're in the right neighborhood.
At least you're getting data. Like that's the key, right?
Exactly.
What are some common sort of marketing misconceptions that you see hold service providers back from scaling?
Oh, this one was me. I lived in this one for a really long time. And so my like, because we're service, that's all. We don't have any courses. Like we are literally 100% service, and that's the way I like it, which is really funny, but not leveraged in any way. But the trap that I fell into, and I see so many other service providers, is that we lean really heavy into traditional like traffic marketing, right? And instead of what really broke my business open, and I've seen work for other businesses that have services that don't need a lot of clients, is that I just had to actually do relationship marketing, which I didn't realize was actually an entirely different thing. And I was like, what? I'm like, what do you mean this traffic marketing thing isn't the only thing? Because that's what I do for other people. So of course it just seems like that's what you should do for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I started to like, okay, this relationship marketing is a thing. And so I have to go like meet people. Okay. And I just started like signing up for really small masterminds because I don't like giant conferences. So I was like, what are like, where do people I think are really cool hang out that either maybe are my customer or might know my customer? And how about I just show up and like meet cool people and have cool conversations and just see what happens? And like my business happened. Like that literally from the very first event I ever did that was like a mastermind of like 5 or 6 people. I got an enormous client that is now an enormous client that is still a client today. This was like 8 years ago. And it all just, I was like, oh, this is it. I just have to actually create relationships with people and not artificial. Like I have no patience for like the little nonsense, whatever,
No,
or sleazy
it's not
sales.
like likes and like hearts and
No,
shit.
I'm like,
That's just
it's
not
like
it.
showing up, being a real human, actually helping out because I just like helping people. Marketing is what I would talk about all day, every day, if I could. So it's not like it's some sort of like hardship to do that. And I just looked for things I could do that with, right? Like just go show up, be helpful, talk to people, even when it's uncomfortable, even when like have coffee chats with people on Zoom, do all of these sorts of things that was so painful in the beginning. But as you said, it was like I had a lot more time than money then. And then that eventually hit. It was like pushing it uphill for a really long time. And then eventually it just fell over the cliff. This huge rock, it gained its own momentum. Then you turn into like all those people that you've been providing service for, and you've been working really hard to do an excellent job. Now you have all of these referral networks and different groups of people that you don't have access to normally. And it just becomes, yeah, this thing with its own momentum and gravitational pull, which is exactly how my business has happened. But I would always recommend, like, especially because you need so few clients for most service providers to be
Absolutely.
game changing. Yeah.
Absolutely. Especially ones that are like your ideal client or in and around even your ideal client.
So I said the thing I didn't realize about high ticket clients, like the really great clients who don't micromanage you and all the things, is like
Trust you.
they
Yeah.
yeah, they have to trust me before they even get on the phone, which is super weird, right? We're, like before we even have a Zoom call, they have to trust me, and that usually comes from being vouched for by someone else. They're in their mastermind, they ask who's helping you with X, or I noticed like you've grown and fixed this problem you've had for a really long time. How did that happen? All of those sorts of clients who are truly like my ideal amazing clients who write checks, they're never late, they pay a lot of money and they're happy to do it, and they get a huge return because their business is made for it, right? Like it's not
Yeah.
it's good all over. Those people need a trust transfer before they even talk to me, and that the relationships I've built in the community are where those come from. So that's something
Yes.
I didn't know about because I hadn't spent a lot of time with really high net worth humans and people that had really successful businesses. I didn't realize that was so important critical to it.
Yeah. When you're talking about ideal client, a lot of people are like, okay, this is my person. But you also need them in a certain stage in business that is best for you to get the results as well. Right.
Exactly.
So a brand new person as an entrepreneur would not make a great Pinterest management client for me.
No,
Right.
exactly. I'm the
Where
same way.
I'm
I'm
doing
like,
all the
oh,
work for them. They'd be a great student. Right. But,
mm-hmm.
but so you also have to consider the space that they're in their business also in terms of creating your ideal
It's
client.
night and day. Like I always look, I'm like, could this person be a good case study in 3 months? Has been like such a great question for myself because I see some wild potential in like everybody because I'm like, they're so excited about their thing. And I'm like, I'm excited about your thing too. But then I'm like, you haven't even sold your thing. Right. So it's like, and that's the hardest part to solve. Right. So I'm like,
Yeah.
we're not uniquely set up to explode your business because you haven't even sold a thing yet and nobody might want it. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I turn down clients all the time because they don't have blogs that, with Pinterest, the
Yeah.
blogs are the clear situation. And they also don't need to think of what I charge as a hardship or okay, we're going to give it a try. Like I do not
Oh, yeah.
want to
I
work
don't
with
like
clients
that
like that. I
phrase.
don't want to put somebody in a
Well,
situation financially like that as well.
well, completely. Right. Because it starts the relationship off really weird. There's just so many things about it that are just not great for
Yeah.
everybody. And it's hard to say no. It really is. But it makes everything so much easier. And for them too. Like it wouldn't work out for them. It wouldn't work out for you. And so,
And if
yeah,
if I feel like I'm waffling, it's a no.
exactly.
I'm waffling because can I help them? Sure. But are they going to be a long-term client? Do I want to put my time into it to have them turn around and end in 4 months? Right. Like that's not success, in my opinion.
No, I agree too. I'm like, I want to be together forever.
Yeah,
It's like,
that's literally, I want that relationship.
I love it. Like to look at back and go, oh my gosh, like we've been working together for 8 years. It's like everything's second nature, right? The team knows them and I know them and we've been through thick and thin with them. And that the startup is always the hardest. And so yeah, like if I can imagine that a client, I'm like, this is risky for a number of different red flags that just aren't a good
Yes.
fit, then I'm
Yeah.
just going to be onboarding for months and then you're going to leave and then we're going to onboard again. And like
No,
that's not good for anybody. So
I
yeah,
agree.
yeah.
Okay, what is a simple way that our audience can begin to sort of incorporate data in their marketing? Give us a couple first steps.
Single first steps. We'll do that. The most important thing is the question that I ask folks, especially if they haven't done any of this stuff before, is more like if one thing changed, right? Like if one metric improved in your business, and what would create the most enormous success in your business? What's like the one thing? And usually they're like, especially for service-based business, they're like clients. If I could get this many new clients a month, sometimes people are like, it's this much revenue. I'm like, just pick the most important metric, the one that would like move the needle the most. And if it's like something like, I just need 2 new clients every month, which would be like 24, which for most service businesses is more than they can handle.
Huge. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially
Yeah.
if you're really small, 24 new clients in a year is enormous. And so then if you start like, this is the metric I want to improve. This is my sole focus, because it's so easy for all of us to get splintered off, especially if we're doing product delivery, and everything. We have all these hats that we're wearing. We're like, okay, the single metric that I'm looking at improving is the amount of clients that come in a month. And then it's just backing out from, okay, what creates clients? Like, what are the steps before? Just like you mentioned with, okay, I'm getting on a call with people. So that's the next step below. And you just kind of map it out. You take your big metric up top, you pin, say, like 5 subordinate metrics, no more than 5, you'll get lost in the weeds. So like, what are the 5 subordinate metrics that make up this metric? How many sales calls do I have? How many contact form fill out, depending on what your funnel looks like, right? And then you just keep backing up. What's the step right before this? What's the step right before this? And then you make sure in the simplest way possible that you can measure each of those steps. And if it's something like calls, you do not need some crazy fancy software or automation. Just count them suckers. Write them on your calendar. Like, use a tally board. I don't care, right? Like, have a spreadsheet. Everyone like always tries to overcomplicate it and then get overwhelmed and not want to do it. But just a simple, I like tracking things weekly. Most of my clients, regardless of volume, it's if you have really low volume, people try to go to monthly, but it's almost like it becomes not enough of a routine that I find it falls
And then
off.
by that time, 30 days has gone by and you can't switch it up in the middle if something's not working.
Exactly.
So I think weekly I like.
Weekly cadence is really good. If you're like super high volume clients will do it every day for kind of those big picture ones to say like, I need to have like 1,000 leads come in every day. And then you can spot things real fast, right? Because ultimately you're looking for what are the leading indicators of success. So my leading indicators of booked calls are like, right, leads, contact form fills out, how many people are coming to certain pages on websites, and then just figure out
on your email list,
right,
which then can lead to say, yes.
And that's truly it. And then you just need to map those to numbers. So the number thing, people can get lost in the weeds too, of like, how do I measure this? Especially when it comes to Google Analytics and stuff. And you just decide, where am I pulling this number from? And you just pull it from that same place every time, because people will often get mad that different tools will tell them different numbers. And
in different sections of that site. Yes.
And they absolutely will. And nothing's actually wrong. And that's the part that's so frustrating to people. I'm like, those numbers are different and they're both right, because they're measuring different things in a different way. And the only thing you need to worry about is that you, like, if you're picking this, I'm getting my page view number from Google Analytics from this particular section, you just bookmark it, and that's the place you always get it. And because you're looking for the trends and the patterns, you're not looking for the absolute numbers most of the time. And then you just see, these are the numbers that I've got, and these are the percentages of how many people move from stage to stage. And then usually I like to start from the bottom up in optimizing that. And then you're like, look for a glaring bottleneck, right? You're like, I only close 1 in 10 clients. Well, then maybe work on your sales scripts and how you do that, right? And then you just identify, what am I going to fix? Like, what am I going to work on fixing? And I will work on fixing that thing until it's no longer a problem. And that's just it. And it's like the relentless focus to resolve bottlenecks in customer journeys is the difference between the people that I see that do amazing and the people that don't. Because the people that don't are jumping around to 100 different things all the time, and nothing ever gets the focused attention it deserves. So that's it.
This
Pick a number.
conversation is
Yeah.
so amazing, and I would love to talk for another hour, but we can't. So, before we get to the gift that you're going to be sharing with our audience, tell everyone about the services that you provide in case somebody is like thinking, I really need Rita's help. Tell everyone a little bit about your services.
For sure. So we work only with female business owners. So that's as a caveat, but that shouldn't be a problem with your audience. We just like the ladies. We just feel the men have enough
Me
help.
too.
And so I'm like, they're good. There's people attending to that for generations. So female business owners, we do fractional CMO services. So if people want to like install a strategy brain, because often a strategy brain is what's missing. They have a lot of hands to do work, but maybe not a strategic brain.
The high
actually,
level
yeah.
overview of the business. And sometimes a business owner cannot do that because we're like inside the jar and we
Yes.
can't read the label on the outside, but somebody else comes in and they see the glaring mistakes like instantly. So
Right.
yeah,
Usually,
that's amazing.
and so we come in and we provide that kind of big picture service for people, and then they'll execute what comes out of that. And then other times, if people don't want to execute that stuff, we kind of act as an outsourced marketing team for them, or we fill in gaps sometimes too, because sometimes people, usually it's copywriting, it's like bury the lead, but no one can find good copywriters, it seems. And then we'll fill in the gaps. If they say they have a great social media team and a great ads team, but maybe their funnels aren't doing well, then we basically kind of fill in the gaps, completely take over the marketing, or we just do the strategy work for people. And so that's what we do.
That's amazing. What's your freebie? Tell everyone how it'll help.
Is we have a very extensive, I'll warn everybody, it is not a Cosmo quiz. We have a very extensive marketing quiz. I call it an assessment. It's at marketingquiz.co. And essentially it goes through and kind of evaluates people's entire marketing, like I call it a marketing department, even if that's just you. And to shows across all the different aspects of marketing, where are you doing really well and where are you struggling? And so that it can help you identify solving the right problem, which is really like the vast majority, like it's the thing people need to do.
I was going to say, that's the thing that people are like, tell me what I'm doing wrong and I'll change it. Like, tell me what the problem is. So this sounds amazing. I'm personally going to even go check it out because I love these things. Thank you so much for your valuable advice and your time today, because time is money. And if everyone out there watching or listening found some ideas and tips that you can implement in your business, we would love for you to leave a review. Now go out there and do something good for your business, like downloading Rita's quiz, assessing what you got on that quiz and where you need to put in the work, and then put some time on your calendar to actually do the work. Because we can spend all day listening to podcasts and getting educated, but if we don't actually put it into practice and take action, we're not going to grow our business.
Exactly.
Thanks.